Shalom, shalom, faith walkers. How are you this glorious evening on Wednesday, March the 27th, 2024? I'm still getting used to saying 2024, but we're here and we're alive and we're well and we're doing the faith walk together on this channel, my Facebook page and my YouTube channel, which is the umbrella over it is Full Life Communications, my media company, and then Life with Sharon. And this is Faith Walk, the intersection of life and faith. Thank you for joining me tonight and every Wednesday evening at 8 p.m. If you're watching on Facebook, please like the page and subscribe to the YouTube channel. Click the notification bell, and when you click it, click all so you'll be notified whenever I'm on. You don't want to have to think about it. And like the video and share it if you think it's worth sharing. I hope you do. So I have a great show in store for you this evening. And as I shared with you previously, I'm going to bring on my bestie, Sandra Lee, a little bit later in the show, and she's going to share some dialogue with me, with us. And we're going to have a personal conversation tonight. And not that we don't normally have a personal conversation, but I'm going to share a little bit about my story to jumpstart the conversation. And tonight's topic is faith and the mental health and emotional challenges that we have, but while we walk by faith. So faith and mental and emotional battles, because those battles are real and we need to be honest because we all go through it, every human being living. So we need to start talking about it so it can no longer just be a stigma because it's our reality. Just like every now and then somebody might get a broken leg. Well, not only one person in the world gets a broken leg, many people have suffered a broken leg, but they're not afraid to talk about it. You go, you get a broken leg from whatever you're doing. You go to the doctor, you get a cast, you heal in 6 weeks or more, or whatever, and you're done. But you're talking about it and no, I'm healed. Why don't we talk about our mental health as much? There's a stigma around mental health, and we're going to break that stigma. I'm a mental health clinician. That is my profession. So that is one of my responsibilities to help break that stigma. So I'm going to start with myself tonight and part of one of my stories. But before we get into the heart of the matter, can you let me know if you can hear me? Put a yes in the chat if you can hear me. And if you can't, I guess you can't put a no in the chat because you can't hear me. So put a yes in the chat if you can hear me. Honey bunches, man, I love you, honey bunches. You're always the first to respond. Honey bunches says yes, she can hear me. Thank you, thank you, thank you so much, honey bunches. And so again, subscribe to the YouTube channel if you're watching via YouTube. Like the Facebook page if you're watching via Facebook, and like the video, share the video. And what I want you to do is I want you to comment. Even though I'm going to share my story, it may have some different nuances in your story, but I believe if you are African American or a person of color, somewhere in what I'm going to share tonight, you have been affected. And so I want you to write in the chat. You don't have to get specific with names or anything like that, but if you can relate. And maybe even some of the story you might want to share. Now, you can only put so many characters when you're commenting. So, don't write a book because it won't send it, and then I won't be able to read it. And also, too, I'm going to put the link in the chat a little bit later. If you want to actually come on the screen and just share a brief snippet of your experience with what I'm going to talk about with my story, which is more, it's a racial component of mental and emotional battles. And so you love me. I love you too, honey bunches. So let's get started with the meat of the matter. So again, this is Faith Walk, the intersection of life and faith. And as believers, our faith intersects every aspect of our lives because we not supposed to just have faith for one thing. We're supposed to have faith for all things because we serve a mighty God and he's a big God and our God can do all things, right? And so therefore we have faith for all things, not some, but all. And if we're not there, we're working to get there. So I'm going to start with my story again, have a conversation tonight. And again, please join me via the chat for your aspect of this conversation that you might be able to relate to. And again, we're talking about mental and emotional battles here, along with our faith. So it was 2020 when George Floyd was murdered. I'm sure, most of you probably remember that. It was a big time day in our history. And in 2021 March, the person who murdered him, a police officer, was tried. That's when his trial was. And so, after his murder, there were protests in the street, and some turned violent. Unfortunately, that's happened sometimes, but a lot of them were peaceful protests because of injustice and police brutality against African Americans. And so I had been, I've had this media company, Black Communications, on social media for a while, and doing different shows. Race Matters, Headline Breakdown was one of the big ones. Myself and my co-host Patrick Tull, we would do Headline Breakdown, which was a weekly news show talking about all aspects of the news, what's going on in news, with politics, etc. So a lot of our news dealt with the racial issues that were happening across America and beyond, but mostly in America. And so in order to do the news, you have to be versed in what's going on in society. So we have to follow, you have to read and watch. And so we were very versed and knowledgeable in what was going on in society when we were doing that show. And so again, watching, all types of these videos that come out when somebody's videotaping someone getting murdered, such as George Floyd. And so we would watch those videos so we can do commentary on the news show about those videos and what we saw in our opinion. And so something happened with me, mentally and emotionally, after George Floyd was murdered. And I believe, as a mental health clinician, it was the culmination of watching so many videos, again, because I did the news, so I have to, and being an African American, and just that was the tip of the iceberg for me. Now, all along, you feel these things. I felt these things because it's a pain for my people being Black people. And I consider myself an activist, and that's why I do the news, specifically speaking about race issues. That's why I have a show called Race Matters, and some other things I do in my advocacy for racial justice. And I just realized that I did not have the capacity to take in any more information via words, whether video, news, etc., that dealt with racial brutality against Black people, and specifically Black people, because that's what we see a lot in the news. Not that there aren't other racial issues. I'm not saying that at all, with other people of color. And I became so overwhelmed with just the weight. That's what it was, the weight of the oppression, the racial oppression after George Floyd was murdered. Again, I think it was not just his death. His was the tip of the straw that broke the camel's back. That was it. And I thought it was after Philando Castile was murdered, and how the video just showed the point blank range of the murder. But it wasn't. It was George Floyd that kind of tipped me over, so to speak, in a mental and emotional realm. And I just, I had to stop doing the news, because I can no longer, at the time, I could no longer watch videos of this and my mental health not be affected, because I was just in a state of, this is too overwhelming. I became anxious. I had an anxiety attack going to the store to pick up my mother's medicine. I was and this is after George Floyd was murdered, in that summer 2020, picking up her medicine, a normal thing that I do, to go into the store to pick up her medicine. And I heard police sirens, and this protest was still going on at this time. And I heard, police sirens. I had already parked, about to get out, police sirens going by. And I froze in my car and just had a panic attack, an anxiety attack. It didn't rise to the occasion of a panic attack. It was an anxiety attack, the heartbeat, quickening, sweaty palms or somewhere sweaty on your body. And just, in that state of panic, but not a panic attack, high anxiety. And I had to sit there till I got myself together, because in my mind, the sirens, and this is a trigger, right? And this may be a trigger for many, many people. I know a friend of mine also too, she was stopped by the police, and just for the police being behind her, I don't even know where she was stopped. is just hearing the sirens. She had an anxiety attack when she got to her destination because that fear sets in. Not that we wanted to. That fear sets in because of what we Black people have suffered in this country, and I'm talking about the United States of America, at the hands of police officers. And let me just say this caveat here: not all police officers are racist, and not all police officers are bad. I do not believe that. But there's bad apples in every bunch. So I'm talking about the bad apples. And so, since we have a history of this in this country, um, I heard the sirens. It's like, oh my God, what's about to happen? Is something going to happen to me? Now, again, this is just the anxiety and the fear. Doesn't mean it's rational, right? But this is what happens when emotional trauma has happened. It's a trauma that Black people suffer because of racism in this country. So I got myself together and it happened again. Right before I could even get out of the car again, sirens coming by, same thing. They weren't after me, but it's just the fact that I heard it and knowing it's a trigger, knowing what can happen to Black folks, with police officers, the bad apples. Had another anxiety attack, got myself together, went inside, and the people in line happened to be talking about, the police. And I was like, oh, yeah, I heard them out there. What's going on? And the lady told me there was a protest not too far from, where this store was. It was a peaceful protest, but, the police are going to have their presence there to make sure they maintain order. So there was nothing, crazy going on. It was a peaceful protest, but they wanted their presence known. But because of it triggering me and the fear that police brutality has created for African Americans in the United States is real. And I had my own experience with it, just as I'm sharing with you. So that's one experience, the anxiety. Then there was a depression that because of the weight, that it was just, I can't seem to get myself together. Now I'm in school getting my PhD, and it's like studying, writing, researching all the stuff, taking tests, all the stuff you have to do, papers for school, showing up to class. I was doing these things, but I wasn't doing them to the best of my ability and wasn't handing things in on time. And actually, I was taking a trauma class at the time, which was the spring of 2021. Actually, I fast forward to spring of 2021 when the I think it's Derek Chauvin is his name, was on trial for his murder, for George Floyd's murder. I couldn't watch the trial. Now, normally, if I was doing the news, I would be watching the trial, all in it. I couldn't do it. Now, of course, you can't get away from it. I couldn't get away from it because even if you turn on the news, you look on social media, you're going to see stuff. And I just, every time I would see stuff, not that I would watch it intentionally. You see a headline, I would turn it off. Or, while you are looking at your social media and video clips come up, turn it off. But it's just, I just became so overwhelmed. Every time I would hear something, I would break down like a guttural cry, because I have a heart for people, one, but I have a heart for my people too. And what we have endured in this country. And it's just a weight for me because it's a weight that I carry because I believe it's part of my God assignment for what God has me to do. So I may carry it a little bit more than others or in some ways than others. And so I struggled, to perform optimally in my tasks every day. And so, I talked to my professors, very understanding because I would hand things in late. I just couldn't get it together. And I actually took some time off because I just couldn't. And I'm feel it's right below the surface. I'm feeling it right now, as you can hear my voice cracking, because it's right below the surface, because I live it every day. We, Black people, we live it every day. And so it took me a while to get I would have been able to have this conversation with you when I was in the throes of it. So I remember talking to my professor and I was just talking and crying and talking. And it was just, I was so overwhelmed. And this is real. And I just want to let you know that racial trauma is real. Right. And so my dissertation was actually born. The topic of my dissertation was born out of my personal experience with vicarious racial trauma. That's the technical term for it. And so let me just break that down a little bit. When you have trauma that's direct, that means it actually happened to you, or someone that you know, close person that you know. Say you have a child and something's happened to your child, then that's trauma for you as well. Well, vicarious trauma, which is a secondary trauma, it's not direct. It's like, I didn't know George Floyd, I didn't know Tamir Rice, I didn't know Philando Castillo, all these people, but because I've watched them get murdered, and probably over and over again via video, I experience mental health issues, trauma vicariously, secondarily, because I don't know them, but I still suffer similar effects as if I knew them. That's vicarious, which is a secondary trauma. Now, this one is racial, so you put the word racial in there. So just want to break that down for you. If any of you have experienced and didn't understand what might be going on when you experience some symptoms and you don't even know the person's like, but this is what it's called, it's secondary trauma. And so I went through that for a period of time, and I had to, again, take some time off from school, gather myself, and it was my faith that I couldn't see how it was going to happen, but I knew that God had me. And he did, because he brought me through it. Right. And he's still bringing me through it. And he's still bringing all of us through it. Because if we are alive today, we've been brought through, even though we might still be going through right now. Right. So if you're living, God is still bringing you through, or has brought you through something, and you're on the other side. So it was my faith, not understanding how. God doesn't say to understand me. He says, trust me. And so it was my faith and my trust that God was going to see me through this time and beyond. Because again, we live it every day, and we're going to, because this is how America is, unfortunately. And so he brought me through that time. And again, then revealed to me the topic of my dissertation, which is vicarious racial trauma, through watching videos of white police officers murdering Black people. So that's the long title of my dissertation. And but I wanted to share my experience as a mental health clinician with trauma, and this racial trauma, vicarious racial trauma, with you, to let you know, one, it's real, which you may have been experiencing because of racial trauma, and maybe haven't even labeled it that, because unfortunately, and this is, I'm not putting, say, professional lingo on. This is my personal lingo. Black people live trauma every day because we are Black in America. Black people, say, in the United States, I should say, right? Elsewhere too, probably, but I'm specifically speaking of the US because that's my experience. And we wear it like skin because we don't know life otherwise. And so we don't think of it as trauma, because this is just how we live. This is just how it is, right? But it's how it is for us. Now, if you ask a white person, they don't have the same experience. So they don't have the racial trauma in that way like we do. So life is different for them. But we have this everyday existence where we're looked at as second-class citizens, or not even human beings, right? We know those days, right? But some people still think like that. And there's microaggressions happening every day, overt acts of racism happening every day, murders happening every day. And that affects us. So it's real. I'm here to tell you that it's real. And I've had my own experience with it. And I'm still having my own experiences with it. I'm still not doing the news. I'm not doing other shows as well. But it's going to be a while before I get back, if ever, get back into doing news, because I have to involve myself, soak myself in it too much. And I don't want to be in that same place I was before. Because the bottom line is Black people are still being murdered. Right. And I would still have to report on it and watch the videos and watch this so I can report professionally on it. I don't want to go there again. It's too impactful. So I don't watch all those videos. I'll watch some things now on social media. I had to take care of myself. So I stopped doing the news. Don't watch all those videos on social media. I'll see the headlines, see what's happening, because I still want to know what's going on in the world. Because one, I need to pray for what's going on in the world. And also two, I am a news person, but I don't indulge in it like I did before. And so when we find ourselves in situations that's affecting our mental health, we have to look at what's causing this and then do what we can, because some things we do have control over. Do what we can to control those things that we have control over. I have control over how much social media I watch or how long I'm on it. So I may be on it, but I'm not watching a lot of news or reading a lot of news headlines pertaining to things that are racial. I read the headlines, know what's going on, but I don't indulge myself fully in it, right? And I don't do the news. And I did the show Race Matters. I put that back on the air after, the 2021, 2022, because that was my way of advocating for race issues. As an activist, as I consider myself, that's my part, using my platform to be able to talk to people about racial issues and enlighten people about racial issues and injustices, racial injustices in the United States and around the world. And that helped me to heal, because now I'm giving back in that way and I'm putting my voice out there. And by speaking about things, just like therapy, when you go to therapy, you talk about things. Through talking, healing happens. So that was a great way to help me to heal, because I'm talking about it. I'm getting it out. I'm sharing my thoughts, my views, my opinions with others that I co-host the show with, and with the audience who was watching. So I had to look at my life, and I had to do some things differently in order to take care of my mental health. I called my counselor, right, and had some counseling, because I wasn't in a good place, because this racial issue in America is deep, it's heavy, it's weighty. So let me look at the chat and see if anyone has a comment. Sorry I went on so long, but I just wanted you to feel, my heart about, where I was then. And again, I'm not going to say I'm totally healed, because as I said, it's right under the surface, because when I start talking about it, it starts to bubble up. And I start to get emotional because it's right there. Because the thing is, we still live it every day. It's not like, oh, racism is over and now I can fully heal and be done. No, it's every day. And so it's a process, an ongoing process, to be able to simultaneously live my best life, right, while living with the greatest scourge in American society, racism, in my opinion, and especially racism toward Black people. So I wanted to share from a mental health perspective, from myself as a mental health clinician, and combining that with faith, life intersecting faith, that is the reason why I was able to overcome my resilience and my faith. And with my faith brings the resilience, and the overcoming, because God made Black people a resilient people. Let me tell you, we may do some things, we may have some jacked up ways, just like every other culture of people, but He made us a resilient people. Because if we weren't so resilient, we probably would have killed everybody around us, every white person around us, right? Okay, I'm really going to get to the comments now. I think the feed went out for a second. I just happened to look up, but if it did, I'm sorry about that. I don't know what's going on with my technology today. Okay, so let's see. Honey Bunches says, I can relate. I had to stay off of social media for a while after that happened. Yeah, I know so many people who said similarly, Honey Bunches. She also said, 2020 summer was very intense, extremely intense. And, and my nephews would go to my twin nephews would go to the protests and whatnot. I mean, and it's a double-edged sword. I'm glad they went, because we need to. But then there's the fear, like, what if something happens? We see people get killed at protests. right? But they want to lend their voice to the protest as well, rightfully so. But they're black men too, right? We you can't help see our color. Sometimes you can tell people, ethnicity by their name, by their or if they say where they're from or something like that. With black people, you see it on us. You don't have to know our name. All you have to do is see us, right? And it's there. So yes, 2020 was a very intense summer. Amir says, exactly, just being an empathetic person amplifies that vicarious trauma. Absolutely, Amir, absolutely. Aisha says, we got all the girls on here tonight, Sandra Lee's girls. I was pregnant during some of the events you're talking about and had to tune some of it out to protect my unborn. Oh, so glad you said that, Aisha. My unborn from any intrauterine trauma. If I were to experience some of those things, trauma starts in the womb. Aisha is so right. You have to be so careful when you are with child. Your stress level, everything. The child can be traumatized in the womb. And people don't talk about that. I don't even think people really realize that. Mom's trauma becomes the unborn child's trauma. So it's so important when you're with child to minimize your level of stress. And Aisha, I'm so glad that you realized that and then, tune things out that you knew would be potentially traumatizing to your child if they were affecting you. I'm so glad you had the wherewithal to do that. Amira says, yes, Miss Sharon recently encouraged me. Yes, Miss Sharon recently encouraged me to unplug from social media to preserve my mental health. Absolutely. Listen, if you don't have your mental health, what do you have? If you don't have your mind, what do you have? Seriously, what do you have? Everything comes from our mind, how we think. And when we can't think rationally, cogently, there's a problem there. And you can look around in your family and your friends and in society, and it doesn't have to be so much somebody has a disorder. You can tell when people have issues. Like, why did you do that? Why do you think like that? There's something wrong there. There's an unresolved issue there. And many of our issues stem from childhood, right? And whoever's childhood has unresolved issues. Well, if I'm in relationship with you, your friend, your mate, whatever parent, then my issues are going to rub off on you. Now, we don't know a lot of this is going on, but it is what's actually going on. Sometimes I see couples in couples counseling. I let them know it's not that he's doing this or she's doing that just because they just want to make you mad or whatever. Your issues are clashing. You just don't know yourself well enough to know this is my issue and this is your issue, and it's just clashing. And if we were to get to know ourselves, and now I know what my trigger is, I can let you know that I'm triggered by this because of. So every time you say this, it's not even about that. It's about that person that I heard say that back in my childhood. And so that person's ringing in my ear with that phrase or sentence or whatever it is person said. And that's why I become defensive. And that's why the punishment doesn't fit the crime with you. You said, wait, I just, yeah, but it's a trigger for me. But if I don't know myself, I can't tell you what triggers me so you cannot do it. And that's what we're clashing all the time because we don't know ourselves. That's why therapy is so important. You get to know yourself and you get to heal from child. We all have childhood wounds. Parents are scarred, so they're going to raise scarred children. The more scarred the parents are, the more scarred the children are going to be. Because parents are parenting out of their scars. They can't help it. I say they want to, you can't help it. You're going to parent out of what you know. If I have a traumatized parent because their parent was traumatized, and so some of their parenting was be based off of trauma. So maybe they're going to be angry. So now when they're angry, maybe they might be abusive. And you didn't even do anything wrong. but they came from an abusive household. So how my parent abused me, so I guess I'm supposed to abuse kids. That's how it works. It's not right to do that, but that's how it works. That's why we need to get into therapy. So let me unravel my childhood so I can do the least amount of damage to my children. So it stops with me. I may have suffered this, but I don't want to pass this on to my children. We've got to begin to think like that. We've got to have the wherewithal to know that I don't know everything. I'm jacked up. I'm a broken, flawed human being, and we all are. We're all broken, flawed. That's the baseline. Just say it, get comfortable with it, but grow from there because we can't change what we deny. Oh, no, I'm good. No, you're not. You're not good. You need to get help like all of us. Life is challenging. It's not the first thing people say, I'm not crazy. It's not about being crazy. Life is challenging. Life is hard. We're broken, flawed human beings, and we need help sometimes to figure this out and to figure out the things that have happened to me and how they are affecting my everyday decisions and every relationship that I'm in. The decisions that you make. Sometimes you can look at people in your job or whatever, like, why did they do that? Unresolved issue. Why did they say that? Unresolved issue. Especially when you see a pattern of it, right? They just don't know themselves and how it's affecting them in the workplace, how it's affecting them in their marriage, how it's affecting them in their friendship, how it's affecting them in their parenting. This is every last one of us. We've got to get it together. So I'm so glad we're in the mental health age where now it's better. We can think of ourselves as not crazy. We just know that I think I just need to talk to somebody to talk some things out, to gain some clarity and to see how my childhood or my this, my that might be affecting me right now. There's nothing wrong with it. There's no harm in it. It makes you better. You have to let go of that pride. That's the work of the enemy. God created counselors. One of his names is counselor, right? This is my God calling. Not because Sharon woke up one day and said, you want to be a counselor? This is my God calling. He created counselors on assignment to help deal with the mental and emotional battles that all human beings go through. It is a thing. It is a real thing. And we need to get real with ourselves and stop acting like we're good because we're not. Okay. Let me read some more comments. Let's see here. Where did I end up? Did I say this one? Yes, I did. Oh, here's the next one. Okay. Being in your right mind is such an underrated blessing. Yes, I put my hands up. So underrated. So underrated. I do not take that for granted at all. Good, honey bunches. Aisha says, I work in a majority white environment and I felt a secondary trauma coming into the workplace. I could just feel the tension in the air. And again, when the trial began, that was a time. I'm telling you, that was a time. That's when and all the DEI, diversity and equity and inclusion started. I'm not saying it's not a good thing, but what has it really changed? We make these things and try to say we're making adjustments in these major corporations. Oh, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. Still, how many Black people do you have at the top? Why? Okay, and this is just me. Why do we have people heading DEI departments who are white? Now that's just me. I'm not saying a white person can't do a good job, but I believe a person of color needs to head up the DEI department. I'm just saying. Talk about it. That's what Amira said. I don't know what I said, but yeah, I'm talking tonight. Honey Buncher says, so true. Many people are unaware of their triggers, and even if they are aware, people often don't respect the boundaries that are placed around them, unfortunately. Yes, and you know what? A boundary is only as good as you enforce it. And so my motto is, if I've set the boundary and you can, I'm going to give you a minute, but if you continually cross it because you're disrespecting my boundaries, now I have to step back. I'm not saying don't love you, but I have to love you from a distance. I have to change how I go about my relationship with you because you don't respect my boundaries. So therefore, I have to spend less time with you. Therefore, that means I'll talk to you less, right? Again, spend less physical time, because now I have to put distance because you're not respecting my boundary. I have the boundary for a reason. And so when you don't change, I have to. But that means our relationship is going to be different now. And I have the gift of goodbye. So don't try me. No. All right. That was let's see. Okay, Honey Bunch is coming. So it is 11:37. Let me bring my bestie on here to talk about this with me because I know she has something to share as well. Let me read this other comment. Amira says, exactly. DEI is just to make the folks at the top, often white, feel good about themselves and their efforts. Couldn't have said it better. Couldn't have said it better, Amira. And Honey Buncher says, the gift of goodbye. Yes. Laughing emoji. All right. I'm going to bring up Sandra Lee right now. Bring her up to the stage. Hello, Sandra Lee. How are you, my darling?
I am doing just fine. I mean, I am just sitting here listening to this, and it is just, oh, it's been so good tonight. It is just so good, and it's always good. So I'm doing well. Just sitting here listening
Good.
to you talk about trauma and thinking of
Yes.
just the mental health and how you got to take care of it. Because, I work in the mental health profession as well. As a matter of
Yes.
fact, you're the one that hired me 20 years ago. And
And I'm so glad I
yesterday,
did.
oh, I'm so glad because it was the beginning of a wonderful friendship. And so I don't know if I'm sitting centered. If I'm centered, I'm still
You're
trying to get
good.
so I'm moving around and like, sit
Right
down,
there. Right there. You're
stay
good.
still. But yesterday it was, oh my goodness, it was just so much. And I had to, when I left my job, I got in the car, and of course I am giving God glory and honor that I have my wherewithal, that I have
Hmm.
my mind. And I said to my girls, we have a 9 o'clock prayer with my sisters and my nieces and my daughters. And I said, give God glory if you have your right mind, because you cannot take it for granted. Because I was watching a person literally thinking that they were an ancient God. Okay. And so I'm watching this person and just really hating the devil, because that right there was possession all the way, right? But
Hmm.
just knowing that you have to turn to your faith in order to make it through, period.
That's right.
Period blank. You can't do this thing without it. I don't even know no other way. And the stresses of 20, let me see, when did it, 2021, no, 2023? When did I come? When did I start
2023
working?
last year is when you came to work for me. Yeah,
Last year. Wow, it was a lot last year. That's when
it
I came
was.
to do help, like home health care for Sharon's mother, my friend Netta. And it is still a challenge on your mental health, right? Because even
Absolutely.
though we laugh and have such a wonderful time, but you see a person and they're doing well, and then they get a setback, and you're like, okay, and then you get them to this point, and then there's another setback. So you're constantly praying. You're constantly praying and like, okay, God, cover my mind. Because see, I am normally always an energetic person. When you see me one time, oh yeah, oh, I like that. She got that sunshine. And I'm normally with it all the time. So that means if I'm always in a sunshine state and I'm always bubbly, I'm always like this, at one point, am I going to break down? Right.
Hmm.
And so people often say, are you always happy? Yeah, I be thinking I am. But then there is those times maybe I'm not showing what I'm really feeling on the inside. Because if I
Right.
work in mental health, and I can't go in having them feeling the way I feel, and it's feeling all depressed or whatever I'm feeling. So I have to always stay above, right?
Hmm.
So because that negative is contagious. Depression,
Yes,
if you stand by too
absolutely.
long, it'll slide on you.
That's right.
You have to constantly be above it, right? And so, but a person like an energetic person that's always laughing, always having a good time, trust and believe. We wear masks because you can't be happy all the time. So
Right.
when you are in your smiling, grinning, happy, when you don't feel like that, that's when you are praying every single second. Lord, keep this
Hmm.
smile on my face. And then when I leave these people, let me go off in the room and bust out crying and holler and roll off.
Right.
What I need to do,
Right.
right? Let me do what
Yes.
I need to do. But in the meantime, let me put that smile on. But baby, they don't call them masks for nothing. So
That,
so yes, Sharon.
absolutely.
Yeah, so
That's
this
so
this
true, Sandra.
right. They don't call them mass for nothing. But the thing of it is that faith and having a belief in God, that is to me, that is the number one way to deal with your mental health, because
Mm-hmm.
he's the one that's going to comfort you, right? And
Absolutely.
you know how people say, well, all I know to do is pray. What you mean, all you know to do? That is the do. Okay. It's not all I know to do is pray. When you pray, that is major. That is
Absolutely.
major, because you have to go before God and say, I'm losing it. I never forget when my not the trauma or grief or depression, the whole mental health of my father died. I mean, I was in a place. When I say a dark
Mm-hmm.
place, because my thing was, my father was a good father. He worked all the time. He didn't have other women. He wasn't drinking. He wasn't smoking. He was a good father. And when he died, I was like, I know it's a whole lot of men you could have took. Them winos that I see going up down the street, you could have knocked them right on out. They ain't got no family, and if they did, who cares? You could have took them right on. I'm just being honest about it, right?
I feel
I
you.
went into a depression and I knew about it. I wasn't in the field at the time, but I knew that there is a dark hole that I used to hear them talk about. But I
Mm-hmm.
always was a woman of God. I grew up in church, and prayer was the thing. You prayed through all of it, right? And it wasn't until, and I was saying to God, I said, God, what are you going to do with me? I am about to cross into that black hole. You got to have something for me, because I haven't been serving you for nothing. I could have been in the party if I'm be sitting here going crazy. I gave up life over there so I could be with life with you. And I wasn't mad about it, but I'm saying, what are you going to do with me in the interim? Because I'm jacked up. You took my dad. Okay, if that's what you were going to do, but you got to do something with me. And so, I've told this story a trillion times. Now, this is not going to happen to everybody that has trauma of a loved one leaving or whatever it is. But I said, you got to do something with me. And I was pregnant at the time, but it didn't even matter, because I was just so getting close to that black hole, and I was like standing right at it. And what ended up happening, in I went to the doctor, and as the nurse began to look at the sonogram, I wasn't even interested, and that's true. I was just depressed. I'm just kind of looking off, and she's showing me, this is the head, and this is the rib, and I'm like, I seen it before. I got two other children. What you talking about? So I wasn't really in it. I'm there, but I'm not there. And I had prayed that, what you gonna do with me, God? I had prayed that prayer probably maybe a couple of days before then, and I was getting closer to that black hole, right? And the lady said, "Now you hold on, now you hold on." And I'm thinking, what's she talking about? Hold on, I'm just laying here. What are you tripping off of, right? So she said, "All right, here's the spine, and see, here's the heartbeat, and here's the other one." Immediately, when she said, "And here's the other one," it the that black hole dissipated, and immediately I snapped out like, "What? What are you saying?" I had twins. I had no knowledge of that it was two on the inside. He used the birth of my twins, or me being pregnant with twins, that knocked me out of that place and put me in another place, right? And so immediately I was like, what? Really? And this is what God said. This is the truth and the light. As I looked at that screen and I saw these little, literally, because you can see all this little stuff moving around. And these little hands was doing like this, right? And it was, they was doing like this, and I could hear spiritually. I'm telling you, I could hear, we're here, we're here, we're here. And I wasn't tripping. This ain't no tripping story. This is what I could hear spiritually, looking at the screen, and these little, we're here, we're here. And God spoke this just as clear. You are consumed with death, but I'm giving you life, and more abundant life. And so that snapped me right into it. From that point forward, it was like, okay, yeah, I was still grieving, but that depression, that feeling that I had
Mm-hmm.
was gone. And that's just one of the, and that was, my girls are 26. So that was way back then. That was just a quick way back then of how close I was to that. Thank you for calling. Have a good day.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
But just everyday stuff, like you were saying earlier, everyday stuff. You could be, I gotta confess, I don't want to say I have a fear of bridges. I don't want to speak that, but anybody who know me know that me and bridges, we don't have a relationship that's good. So when the bridge in Baltimore collapsed yesterday, my girls, I didn't even know it. My girls had sent texts out to each other saying, "Don't tell mommy, don't tell mommy, don't let mommy know about this bridge situation, because we're gonna be going to North Carolina for Easter, and there's a bridge we have to travel, Delaware Memorial." Stomach is dropping while I'm talking about it. And so I don't drive off of it, but I'll ride over it. But it's still it's a whole thing. And immediately, Sharon, my stomach dropped. And even though I had to basically um, work with mental health, with all of the things that was going on that was psychotic in every way, I still had this feeling. And I had to pray through that whole day, calm this stomach, keep this, don't, Lord, don't let this come on my mind. Don't let it come all over me. And then when I left that job and I rode home, that faith you talk about, I was in that car speaking in tongue and anointing myself. And I said, oh, I'm not going to have this stomach feeling this way.
Mm-hmm.
Anxiety, you got to get this car. I'm rolling this window down. You're going out this window. And so you have to have it in order to walk through this life. It is impossible. I'm going to say this is Sandra's feeling. And probably everybody that's on the line, because most of the people on the line are believers that if you're not, you'll be in a minute. You can't walk through this life without having a relationship with God. You can't. If you can, go ahead, try it, but I can't. So faith and that walk of just being faith, just faith and holding on to God, hey, I have to do it. I have to be a part of it. Because if not, people say, Sal, you're so crazy, you're so funny. If you think I'm crazy and funny with this, and I'm really sane for real, oh, but you don't want me to slide to the insane. You don't want me to slide to the insane.
Exactly.
Okay? You don't
Exactly.
want me to slide to the insane. But yeah, Sharon, so, you have to have faith in order to be able to do this life. But I heard somebody call it, it's called lifing. You know what I mean? You have to have
Right, right,
faith
right.
to do this lifing.
Oh, absolutely. I know I couldn't get through that time in 2023 and just other things, in life, without my faith.
Hmm.
And just like you were talking about earlier, even though what I was talking about going through in 2020 and 2021 with the racial trauma, um, but when I would get in front of my clients,
Hmm.
none of that was present.
Right,
I was
right.
I was on point. I was in tune.
Oh, yes.
They were getting free, crying. Oh my God, thank you! And now my trauma is lifting, and I feel, and turn I do the virtual counseling now. Turn the camera off, and you said, then I'm sitting on the side of the bed, like, help my mind, Lord, help my mind, right? Because I'm going through, the counselor's
Right,
going
right,
through,
right.
right?
Exactly,
And
exactly.
but when I turn the camera on, it's this, Holy Spirit just takes over. And not that Holy Spirit is not taking over when I'm in my private time, but
Right,
I have to leave my stuff to the
right,
side in order for Holy Spirit to use me effectively for those who I counsel.
right. Sharon, it was
And
some
so,
things popping up while I was talking. Like, I guess people were
oh
saying,
yeah, I put them on the screen.
oh, okay,
Yeah,
because
those will come. I'll put them back up since you were talking. Honey Bunches says you exude the joy of the Lord, but also have to protect your peace at all times, especially in your field of work. Talking
Amen.
specifically about you, Sandra.
Okay,
And
amen.
then Amira says, then the Lord blessed you with beautiful twin babies.
Oh, they never make it about
Yes,
that. I got you.
yes, he
Okay.
did. And let's see. Wendy Whitfield says, "Thank you, Sandra, for opening. Share your experience in faith." Oh,
All
hi,
right,
Wendy.
all right, Wendy.
So yeah, I mean, this is real. We
Yeah,
have to begin to, and we've already begun. I say begin to, but even more so, have these conversations
you
because
have
I
to.
often have people in counseling thinking that it's just them. And it's like, it's not just you. People just aren't talking about it. I see tons of people with the same issue.
Right.
Really? Right. And they think theirs is the worst. Child, please. I've heard so much worse, right? But because no one's talking about it. So,
Right,
my platforms, and all of the shows that I do, we talk about mental health, and we're going to
right,
continue to talk about mental health and how what we know as believers, the number one weapon
right.
against mental health is Jesus Christ,
Of
right?
Nazareth.
The way
Right.
of the cross,
Okay.
right? And so let me
Exactly.
share this with you because this is a book that some of you may want to get. It's not a long book at all, but it was one of the books that it was a required reading in my PhD program, and it's called Healing Racial Trauma. Um, and I'll give you this, got a second part, resilience and something, but I'll give you that in a minute. But this chapter is called Racial, and it's by Sheila Wise Rowe. I think I put that, hold on, let me put that up. I think I did put
Uh,
that in. No, you know what? I was running late, so I didn't, but I'll give it to you. Sheila Wise Rowe. If somebody can put that in the chat for me, Healing Racial Trauma by Sheila, Sheila Wise, Wise, Rowe, Rowe. So this chapter is called Racial Battle Fatigue. I'm just going to read a snippet. So racial battle fatigue, well, racial battle fatigue is a term coined by Professor William Smith of the University of Utah. His study showed how the mental and physical stress people of color face from racism is similar to what soldiers experience in battle. He says that the stress of navigating in white spaces is mentally, emotionally, and physically draining for people of color. Every day, people of color are faced with interpreting the subtleties of microaggressions, deciphering the layers of discrimination included in the insults, and deciding whether or not to respond. The Mayo Clinic defines fatigue as a nearly constant state of weariness that develops over time and reduces your energy, motivation, and concentration. People of color are frustrated and tired of fighting racism and systemic oppression. Fatigue may be the way our body alerts us to the fact that we are depressed and in need of rest. And that's what I did. I took a step back, had to rest my mind, my emotions, and my body from what I was seeing via social media with the brutality, police brutality against Black people. And I don't have time to get into that's part one. Part two, I'll get into another week, maybe next week with 2023 and how, that was such a mentally draining year for me. And this racial battle fatigue, that's the name of it. That's what we experience ongoingly because it's constant. It's not a one and done. It's and we're tired. That's the fatigue. We're worn down. The energy is lost. It's like we even though we can, it's like I can't do it anymore. And sometimes we have to take a step back because it's like, you know what, it is too much. Like, Honey Bunches and Amira said that and I think Aisha also too said they had to step back from social media. It becomes too much. So those things that we do have control over, take that control. Can't control other people's actions, but what I can do is I can pull myself back and how much I involve myself with X, Y, and Z person or social media or whatever the case may be.
Mm-hmm.
Take the controls that you can. And that's your self care and build your faith. Constantly be in prayer. Maybe there's some fasting that needs to take place, study of the word, fellowshipping with saints in your local assembly. All of that helps because then those people are praying for you. Let them know. Pray for me. Pray for my mind
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
because it's rough right through here.
Right.
When the George Floyd issue was going on, we had to pray for the minds of Black folks.
Right.
Right. And I pray for the minds of white folks too, because it's like, okay, you're doing this, something is wrong. At least speaking of police brutality with white officers and Black people specifically, something's wrong with their minds. So they need prayer too. Perpetrators need prayer too, because if we didn't have any perpetrators, we would have no victims.
Right.
Right. So we have to pray for both.
Right.
Keep your mind saturated in the word of God.
And Sharon,
Constant in prayer. Yes, Sandra.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but one of the things you were talking about, how you have to step away.
Mhm.
Sometimes I'm gonna say this. Sometimes you have to take a day off of work to get it
Oh,
together.
absolutely. I believe in
Some,
mental health days.
sometimes you got to just go ahead and take that mental health day, and it's like this was too much. I got to just be off for a minute and get myself together, right? And
That's
guess
right.
what? Now I'm gonna say this, but I know my people who know me, they're gonna come after my neck when I say it. Sometimes, they're gonna be all right if you ain't there. Now I know it's funny for me to say it because I be acting like they can't function without me there because I do so many things. But they're gonna be all right because I'm going to North Carolina on Friday. I won't be there Friday and I won't be there Monday. They still gonna be able to focus and concentrate and have a good time and do what they're gonna do, right? And so when you feel like that you are the be all and the end all and they have to have you, then you feel tied to that thing, right? And then you feel like I can't take a day off. But when you need to get your mind together, especially if you got tension at work and it's the racial thing, or even if it's not the racial thing, or even if it's something, even if it's a personal thing that's going on with your family, whatever the case may be. Don't feel bad when you have to take a mental health day, because it's better that you decide to take it versus it decide to take you. Let me say it again. It's
Exactly.
better that you decide to take it or it decides to take you. Sandra, what are you saying? Because if you do too much, your mind will shut down, and next thing you know, you'll be eating cotton out of a pillow. Okay, so you have to do the necessary things to keep it. It's all about self-care.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Totally agree. Sometimes, whether people understand it or not, you got to step back because the
yeah,
bottom line is they will operate without you,
right,
right? They will operate without you.
right,
But people will use and abuse you, not even intentionally. Oh, but
right.
she'll do it. She always does it. She always does it well. So they're always calling your name. That's
Ooh, don't
exactly
talk about me.
right. All right. So
Don't
let
talk
me
about
give you, I wanted to give you the full name of that book,
me.
Sheila
Right.
Wise Rowe. Rowe is Rowe, and it's Healing Racial Trauma, The Road to Resilience. Healing Racial Trauma, The Road to Resilience by Sheila Wise Rowe. And let me tell you, this book, let me just tell you the chapter titles: Wounds, Fatigue, Silence, Rage, Fear, Lament, Shame, Addiction, Freedom, Resilience. Those chapters are so powerful, and it's Christ centered.
Wow.
It's a Christ centered book, but she gets to the heart of the matter, the reality of the matter, and she gives you scripture and how Christ is the way to overcome.
All right.
You can ask for more than that.
You can't ask for more than that for sure.
That's right. Okay, let's get to some final ones here so we can wrap this up. Let's see. Honey Bunches says, I took a mental health day from work today. Yay, Honey Bunches. Good for you. Good for you. It's necessary. I'm telling you, with my when I have my staff from my own company, oh, there's going to be built-in mental days every month. Ain't no
Hello.
here and there every month. So if you be on
Right.
my staff, oh, I believes in mental health. So we want to have days off. Go somewhere, sit down, take a rest, regardless, take those days off. Really, I can't watch the news every day. Wendy says it's too much. It is too much. Okay. Let's see. Amira says it was so good for us to be here tonight. Thank you all for sharing and being vulnerable with us. Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much for that comment, Amira. We have two more. Let's see. Wendy says, haven't worked now for years, but I remember taking mental health days. It's necessary.
Right.
And
Right.
Wendy says, that's right. And that is the last of our comments. And it's 9 o'clock. So we want Sandra and her family to be on their prayer line on time. So we are
Exactly.
going to end the show right now. Thank you so much, Sandra, for joining me this evening.
Absolutely. Thank you, Sharon. See you
You're
next week.
welcome. I love you. Can't
I
wait to see
love
you
you more.
tomorrow.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you, Faith Walkers, for joining Sandra and I tonight for another live episode of Faith Walk, the life, the intersection of life and faith on the Full Life Communications Network. And before you go, like the video, subscribe to the channel on YouTube, like the Facebook page, share the feed so others can be blessed by it as well. And join me next Wednesday live at 8 o'clock for another live episode. I love you. Have a God evening.
All right.
Shalom.
Hello.